It's 7 o'clock. Shall we begin?
I don't see why not.
All righty. Well, let's see. Welcome to the March virtual show table. Welcome to our new members, Cheryl, Mary, Violet, and Paige. Thanks to everybody for sending in the great pictures this month, and thanks to Janice for putting together the show table presentation, and thanks to Courtney for telling us our bedtime stories.
Are we ready?
Yeah, we're ready.
Janice does such a good job of putting things together. I realize that as I go through these each month getting ready that she spends a lot of time doing it. Makes it
Yes, and
easy for
she's
me.
very artsy too. She's got the artistic touch.
Yes, she does. Okay, first up, Vanda surescens from Southeast Asia. It's one of the Vanda species that can contribute the cerulean or blue um, to its progeny and into um, genetic lineages. It's a smaller one compared to the Vanda caerulea and doesn't have as good a shape. And the plants generally tend to be smaller too. So it's not used as much to get the cerulean in. It's done a really good job adding cerulean to some of the smaller growing Vandas.
Mm.
And you can see from the photo, it's got a nice blue coloration to it. Next, Picara Delight and Pat Delight. The Pat Delight is a real famous hybrid. Comes in a lot of different colors, and you can see that it's got all the things that you would probably want in a vanda. It's a large flower, good Schilleria or Sandarana shape. Inflorescence is a Sandarana type. Picara Delight, it's just got a beautiful blue color to it. And I would say that looking at that, the arrangement of the flowers seems really good um, for a hybrid that's got so much Sandarana in it. And you can kind of see that it's still got buds opening. That's a beautiful clone. You'll also notice that the flower on the right, you can see the petals don't quite overlap. And that's just the fact that it doesn't have as much of the Sandarana as you might want for a perfect flower, but it's got other things going for it. It's very nice. Both of them are very nice Vandas. Next, Vandagerii or Ascocentrum. This is one of the species we talk about all the time. It's just one of the species in what we used to call the genus Ascocentrum that have now been incorporated into Vandas. And you get a good idea of the structure of the plant right there, the way the leaves are close together. Can't quite see the size of the plant, but these are small compared to the standard Vandas. They incorporate great color, this one particularly, into hybrids. If they're in the larger size, the Sandarana types. And they also have another characteristic that I really love. They will produce multiple inflorescences. They like good light. If you're really getting them almost maximizing the light. The leaves will even get a little reddish, and that can be a pretty characteristic in itself. But it looks like it's growing pretty well. That's Joe Sayers doing this. Good photo too.
Yeah.
Next, this one's for you, Terry. Vesca Stylus Wolfpack Red. I knew I had to put that in there. It's an interesting hybrid. I saw years ago a friend of mine got one from a nursery and trying to think near on the west southwest coast, and I begged her to get me one the next time she went down there, and she picked one up for me, and I had it for 10 years, and it finally bloomed. One of the things I've discovered about Rinca stylus being added to Vanda hybrids is many times they're not as free blooming as Vandas or as Ascocentrums crossed with Vandas. But you can see the color, and the reason I really loved it is the size of the inflorescence and the strength of the inflorescence can be remarkable. Still not there, but plant has to get to be pretty large before you start seeing those blooms regularly. They do like high light. On the right is Vascostylus faboon velvet. Um, and this has got Rincostyla celestis in it. And you can see some of that in the way the flower shape is and that beautiful cerulean lip. Looks like it's nicely grown. Can't quite tell how many flowers it's going to get. I believe there's still some buds coming in there. Next, Pomata- Pomatacolpa spiciatum. You can't quite see the flowers as well as you would probably like, but you can see all the inflorescences and the buds coming. It's a really interesting species in that it is distributed extremely widely, from India through Indochina into the Indo-Pacific. It's hard to imagine a species having that wide of a distribution and not having speciated at all, which makes it intriguing to me. Some taxonomist starts playing around with the different island populations. I suspect we'll see that broken up into some multiple species. Vanda Phoenicia Joanna Delight, Denisoniana bifalcata. Denisoniana is a Vanda that has unusually bright yellow to almost golden colors, and it spreads it to whatever you're crossing it with. Didn't come out quite as dark as it has with some of the Vandas I've seen with Denisoniana as a parent, but this is crossed with what's now Vanda falcata. And again, that's just something that we're going to have to get used to, I guess. And you can see all the flowers, relatively small growing plant. These grow pretty well under lower light. So it's a perfect Vanda for those of you who do not have a lot of light or grow inside, because it will bloom just fine in lower light. And of course, right next to it is Neophoenicia falcata, the parent that we just talked about. Referred to it as Neophoenicia, just to make sure you realize that's the species that we keep talking about. Look at that nectary, that long nectary. That's designed to attract pollinating insects that have to reach down with their proboscis or tongue to get the nutrition that it's providing. Again, this is a species from Japan and a few close by islands. But look at how it's being grown. Notice the sphagnum wrapped around it. There's the art almost to just repotting these, or I guess re-wrapping them with the moss. It looks like it's being done really nicely. Next, Foul Lose Fantasy. I was interested in this when I first saw it because it looked very much like a species we used to call Equestra alba aurea, which was a white equestrus with a beautiful yellow lip. And indeed, when I looked this up, it's got 3 doses of equestrus in the background, and I'd bet money one of them is the Equestrus alba aurea. Um, Wonderful thing about equestrus is it produces lots of flowers, long inflorescences, and in this case, just that perfect white background with the yellow lip. Very nice hybrid. Mini lemon drops, variety Sweetheart. This is an interesting thing. Good color, Tetraspis is one of the parents. And I don't think about that as being a really good parent just because of the way the Tetraspis blooms with different colored flowers and petals. But this one looks like it just took the color pattern from the other parent. And nicely so. Nice flat flowers. Probably get more. It's hard to tell what the arrangement's going to be. It looks like they may be shingled, but it's hard to tell with that species in the background. Schilleriana, pink butterfly, AMAOS. It's nice to see that this clone is still around. I know it's been mirror cloned a lot, but it seems that Phalaenopsis that are mirror cloned disappear after a decade or so. But this is a beautiful example of that species. It's pink butterfly is a good name for it. Look at the shingling on it. You can't see the leaves of the plant, but Schilleriana has beautiful leaves, mottled, and they'll actually grow pretty well under higher light. I've seen them grown with Vandas and the plant allowed just to hang down like it would be in nature. It's a perfect way to grow it, but that's clearly being grown very well. Next, Falceoda Twinkle, chocolate drop. And that's an interesting one because it's got Schilleriana as a parent. And obviously it's got that intense color coming from the mutant that came out of Taiwan many years ago. This one doesn't have any spotting contributed by that Taiwanese. I guess this is a grandparent probably or great grandparent. but the Schilleriana seems to be dominating and holding the color very uniform in this particular hybrid. Very pretty. Um, Phalaenopsis Chia E. Yenlin. I don't know much about this other than you can get some sense of what's in the background just by the number of flowers and the way the branching is. I almost guarantee you this has got some pretty good dose of Phalaenopsis equestris in the background just because of that branching habit, because that's characteristic of the equestris and passed on not just to its offspring, but grandparents and great grandparents, depending on what else is in that lineage. Next, Cymbidium sweetheart, variety elegans, Floribundum by Alexanderi. This is an interesting thing. This goes back to 1955. And what most interests me is that um, the interest in growing warm growing cymbidiums didn't happen until after that date. So I'm a little bit curious as to who was working on this and when did they start working. Maybe this is just an example that inspired those in South Florida to work on the warm growing things. But a very interesting looking cymbidium. The cymbidium on the right, cymbidium hot pink overnight, that's more of what we would expect to see in standard cymbidium hybridizing. Notice the number of flowers, just nice color, a pretty lip, um, and a more round flower versus the Floribundum hybrid that we just talked about. Next, Oriental beguilement. That's a beautiful thing. Um, I was first distracted by this because it had my name attached to it and I couldn't remember seeing it. While I may be losing it, I didn't think I'd gone that far down the road. I've always loved the paths. I don't grow a lot of this type of path, but if you really look closely at this flower, you'll see little tiny hairs on the petals and the fringes of the petals. You'll see those fine dots all the way at the end of the petals and the larger dots. Paths are so intricate in many ways that each one you can spend time just staring at if you look at all the details. This one has a really nice lip, nice, almost a solid color with some veining in there. Just well grown by Sharon Carter, not me. Path Narita Hasagawa. Narita was a friend of mine, and I was always happy to see something named after him that came out so beautiful. Malapoense by Armeniacum. Armeniacum was that amazing yellow species that came out of China and Vietnam. And here in this particular hybrid, the hybrid is yellow, but not all the Narita Hasagawa are yellow. But this one sure is. Look at the pouch. It's a gorgeous pouch. And these are pretty large flowers. Armeniacum also has the distinction of having a really nice fragrance, which not all paths have, for sure. But the species and the group that it comes from, many of those do have fragrances. Next, Dendrobium anthistoglossum. Beautiful thing. We don't see this as much as you might think we would see it. It's a cool growing species. And what I found interesting was it tends to be growing on limestone in the Philippines anyway. I don't think of dendrobiums as being terrestrial, but again, it's the kind of situation like many paths. It may be growing terrestrially, but it's largely growing in limestone rock with some amount of litter or decomposing organics in it. That looks like that's flowering very well. I can't quite tell how many inflorescences there are on this plant, but this is one of the ones that does hold on to its leaves when it's flowering. Next, this is a great compendium of different kinds of dendrobiums, from relatively large ones like Dendrobium gouldii to fairly small ones like the Glomyriatum. Myriatum. Well, it's close enough. Dendrobium papilio, Dendrobium nobili, Dendrobium carpum, and yes, that's all of them. And notice the difference in the shapes. I emphasize all the time when I give talks on reflowering your orchids, how varied the dendrobiums are, not just in the way the flowers are shaped and colored and the size of the plants, but also just by the fact that what it takes to get them to rebloom can vary so much from not needing anything other than lots of warmth and sunlight to having to have extreme um, 3 months or so of cold weather where it drops all its leaves and dryness. So that's something that if you grow any of these species, or even if you grow a hybrid, you look at the species in the background, you're probably going to have to pay attention to what it takes to get them to bloom if you want to grow them and bloom them in your greenhouse or your growing area. Next, Oncidium chaculatum, clockwork. This is an interesting one. I was looking at those flowers. I feel that I've seen this before somewhere, um, maybe in a show or a show table. And the color, as I recall, just surprised me. The color is pretty dark on the petals and sepals, and then that yellow contrasting lip really set this clone off. I'm not sure why the name Clockwork got into this, but it also looks like it's a well-flowered clone,
Maybe
which
it
would make
blooms at the
sense.
same time every year.
Maybe that's it. That would be a good way to name a plant. Siku Marguerite Twinkle is one of the parents. Twinkle is used to be a pretty common oncidium around. It's a relatively small growing oncidium compared to some of the big ones that have huge numbers of flowers. Beautiful color, nice shape. Hard to see everything in there I might want, but the color does it for me. I'm surprised there's not a clonal name on this one because I'm betting money that that's probably a clone that's been mirror cloned. Bottom, Oncidium splendidum. This is one of the species out there that just takes over your greenhouse if you let it. It will get very large with lots of flowers, and you can see why you'd want to keep it and let it get large. Look at all the flowers on that, and they're fairly large flowers for an oncidium. This is yours, huh, Sue?
Oh yeah, it puts on a show every spring.
What size pot's that in?
Probably in a 8-inch pot.
Yeah, it looks like a really nicely grown plant based on the inflorescences coming up.
Yeah,
Next, Alciara snowblind sweet spots. That's a clone I see many times when I'm doing show tables everywhere. Seems not just in Florida, but everywhere because the flowers are large. Um, the spotting is nice, that beautiful white color contrasting with the kind of ivory petals and sepals. Um, they're usually very well grown, and that says to me that they're easy to grow hybrid, which is why I see so many of them because they're available and people grow them well. To the left, Brazilian sun, Samba. Here again, look at the color on that. Look at the flower size, the flatness. It's more of a concolor. That white, um, the white part of that flower just really sets it off from the petals and sepals. Next, Tolumnia gyrec fern. I'm always amazed when I see multiple clones of the same hybrid that look so different. But when I used to grow a lot of these and made some of my own hybrids, it happened regularly because of the different species in the background and the number of chromosomes that there are in this particular group of orchids. It means that it's possible to get huge variations in just 3 or 4 different clones, not just one out of 100, but that is more of the norm. What's fascinating to me is as soon as I saw this, I knew exactly what was in the background of this to get these red colors, and that's Oncidium or Tolumnia hannekenii. It is the species that produces the red. Even if you look at the flower shape in the hannekenii and you don't see it here, It's simply because it is one of the few species in the Tolumnias that will produce red hybrids in its progeny and future progeny. And it is in this one and well shown with the colors. Next. Bulbophyllum falcatum. Every time I see this, and this is yours, Sue, I think you brought this to show tables occasionally. It's fascinating, not just because it's a different sort of an inflorescence, but also because it is one of the species from Africa. The bulbophyllums are the only genus that are essentially around the world in tropical climates. And the African ones look very different than some of the ones that we see from South America and Indochina and so forth. Really pretty in contrast the way that the inflorescence is set off from the flowers. Next, Sarcolepsis, a hybrid, which I find interesting. It seemed that it took forever for people who grew the terrestrials to get the idea of making hybrids. Stenosarcus vanguard on the right was the first one I saw that popped out, and the leaves are beautiful on these because they're most of them we'd call jewel orchids because their leaves are very beautiful. And finally, some hybridizers took note of the fact that there are species out there that have some color and they're producing both colorful leaves and colorful flowers. Next. For the miniature lovers, we have something here for them. Lepanthes saltatrix. And again, you can get a sense of how small the plant is and how small the flowers are. And there always were a few people who gave talks and they would show you beautiful photos of Lepanthes and many of the other miniatures, but you couldn't tell the size. And when you saw a blow up of the flowers on some of these miniatures, they blow you away, but you just can't get a good look at it on a small plant. So when you do see some of these miniatures in bloom at the show table or in a show, take a close look at the flowers, especially if you've got a magnifying glass or the feature on your camera phone that allow you to blow things up. You'll be surprised with how gorgeous the flowers are. Platystelia umbellata. This is an interesting thing, and again, nicely shown. You can see the size of the plant, and then you can see the size of the inflorescence. Not something that we see, even though it's widespread in South America in its distribution. We just don't see it much. Maybe because it's so small, we just don't have a lot of people growing it, frankly. And it's kind of unfortunate, but there are a few devotees of these small things. So they're going to be around and you'll see them in shows for sure. Next, Bob Betts York, a beautiful thing. Supposedly the parents are Bob Betts by Mossy, and I think we know now that it wasn't a true Mossy. It was a misnamed clone that came by a lot of different names at one time. I think a speciosissima was it, but that was basically a ludi, which explains some of the shape that's in this particular flower. The evidence primarily is that all the other clones, all the other crosses that remade this with a Bobel's by Mossy, none of them came out as good as the original one.
So the parent was a Lutomania hybrid or a?
It's always was always listed as a species, speciosissima.
Oh, okay.
And that was the same name given to Ludi early on. Although there's still some debate about that, but it was a white clone, wild collected, that is just as beautiful and round as that Bob Betts. It's shockingly good for a species. And it turns out it was a tetraploid, which gives you some idea why this cross was so good. On the right is Callias silver flute, Hope Ranch. And what was fascinating about this is that this has 2 doses of Laudigizii, the parent and the grandparent. And I'm a little surprised at how good the flower actually is, despite the fact that it has 2 doses of that species that's not known for its roundness. Um, but the other side of it is the bow bells in the background was probably a tetraploid. So we're
Uh,
probably looking at triploid or some sort of a mix of numbers of chromosomes. It's hard to say without being able to look at it carefully. Next, a great example of the lutees, um, Cattleya lutemanianas on the top, are from a population that is known for large flowers with great shape. The the color is not as dense as the other population, which tend to be smaller flowers, but more intensely pigmented, like you can see below. That's your clone, Sue. And I know for years hybridizers kept combining the two, like the Lutemania Arthur Chadwick. Look at the size of those petals with the real intensely colored ones. And some of the ones I'm seeing now seem to have about the best of both. So I imagine that the hybridizers, people who worked on this, have accomplished their goal of getting a Lutemania with great shape and great color too, because they're all three beautiful clones. Um, and the Lutemania Arthur Chadwick is sort of an older one. So that's why you don't quite see um, the color in that one. Next, this is one of my hybrids. This is Luscious Blush. I've always loved that blush color, and getting well-shaped flowers has always been hard because of the mechanism to get it. But this is one I particularly like. It's got just enough of the blush combined with that beautiful lip. And in this is Laelia anceps. It's got actually two doses of Laelia anceps, grandparent and great grandparent. And that makes for a beautiful stem, which is another nice goal hybridizers sort of forget about. Next, Cattleya prism palette, Mischief. This is a very interesting hybrid and interesting in some of the same way. This has got intermedia kinei in the background, and that's coming through the colorima. Colorima is a diploid. Horus is a tetraploid. Most of the early crosses trying to get that kinei color pattern onto large flowered cattleyas, they succeeded, but the flowers were really badly cupped because they were both diploids. This was a way of incorporating twice the number of chromosomes from Horus, which has got a pretty flat flower, great petals and sepals, and blend them with the 2N from Colorama to get pretty flat flowers. There are quite a few clones of this that have been awarded, and they all have the same general pattern, just different amounts of yellow and purple in there. It's beautiful. It's easy to grow thing too. Next, RLC Mysterious Valley. I put this in here because I wanted to show a photo of a Circle of Life cross that did not droop badly. And Circle of Life has this interesting background of a tetraploid lavender with a tetraploid coccinea. And the coccinea has always dominated for the inflorescence, with it having just one or maybe two flowers, where the flowers tend to look down instead of be flat. This was a pretty nice one. This was a cross made in Hawaii and with Jeremy Island, which is a beautiful example of the common 4N hybrid out of Carter and Holmes. Memoria Grant Eichler. I think I have seen this in the last 2 or 3 of our show tables. Have I not, Sue?
I think so. It's yes.
And it's in bloom in my greenhouse right now.
Ready now.
It is a spectacular hybrid, even though it took a long time for, I think, it to be truly recognized. It was first awarded in 1993. And it was interesting because I recall at the judges arguing about whether to award it or not, because it wasn't a flat flower, but it was huge. I think it was 22 centimeters across when it was first awarded the HCC. And there have been other awards to it where it had 23 centimeter flowers in natural spread. That's 9 inches across.
It's amazing.
and it holds itself up. And typically you'll get two flowers, rarely three, but it's pretty hard for the flowers to be arranged well when it has three flowers. But with two, it can be almost perfect. Boy, there's a lot of flowers on this particular plant, so that's being grown pretty well. Next, Mariadale Backrack. This is my clone that I've used to make several hybrids. I love this thing because it illustrates some of the characteristics that are coming from pretty old hybrids. Cattleya Sheen is a French hybrid from Vacheron-Lecouf. It makes great colored flowers, and it almost always gives that pattern of that red on the lip. But it just any hybrid you put it with, it intensifies color. Cross with a lavender, it makes reds. Caesar Head is a cross that comes from Carter and Holmes. It's sort of a different approach to making a yellow with a good dose of bifoliate cattleyas in the background, and it is a great parent too. So you'll see both of these parents in other hybrids, and here they are combined. This is a cross made at Carter and Holmes many years ago. Laura Santora. This used to be called a Potnara. William Farrell was always an interesting thing, used in a lot of hybrids. In this case, you're producing a beautiful light yellow. The color on the lip is interesting. Notice the flower on the bottom right. Notice how it's more white. And that was a characteristic of an awful lot of yellow hybrids in the old days, where you got a beautiful yellow flower and it would fade to white as it aged. Sometimes it's the opposite. It opens white, can open white, and then get some yellowish color, depending on temperature. Next, Mia's Fascination by Oconee. It's unfortunate that that hasn't been named yet. Look at the color on the petals and sepals. Very dark. I especially like the way the lip is arranged. Um, nice thing. You get that from me, Sue?
Yep,
I thought so.
yep,
You got a good one there.
yep.
I have not used this to make any hybrids, but I've been tempted several times because it is just a beautiful thing. But Oconee comes through every time when it's apparent. You always get good characteristics from Oconee. On the upper right, Hawaiian Prominence America. That's got an award of merit. And I remember the first time I saw it, it was one of the reddest cattleyas I'd ever seen. As red as any coccinea. And that's not where the red comes from. The red's coming from a mix of yellow and lavender. Bottom right is Mandarin Smoothie, Heather's Gold, and EFG hybrid that has, what I'm trying to think of it, Heather's Gold, has Golden Zell in the background. Carolina Splendor is the other parent, and that comes from Lynette Orchids, which is a blood red. And all this whole Grex has been between orange and red orange. There's almost been no variation in it, which is quite a surprise for that kind of hybrid, actually. Next. Thought we'd see more of Garanthe Skinneri. This is the time for it. Maybe we'll see them next month too. This is the lavender form. Notice the large petals. It's a fast growing thing, fast growing that it's hard to keep in a pot. If you've got this and you can't keep in the pot, try a basket or a mount. Once they get going, they'll produce a lot of flowers every year. If you can keep it in a pot, you'll be better than most people. Hailstorm on the right, Beringiana by Skinneri. It's interesting. Here's the fall blooming Beringiana. It's a Garanthe too, with the Skinneri, which is spring blooming. An interesting mix. I'm unsure of who's dominating here, but I think maybe it's the Skinneri. It's an interesting contest between the two. Next. This I really love too. We've had some good examples of the variation of species. This is Garanthe arandiaca. On the upper left is Mishima spots. The bottom is a yellow form of arandiaca. There are quite a few clones out there. And then the very bottom is the red form. The red form was fascinating when it came out. There are an awful lot of people looking at it claimed it could not possibly be arandiaca, but I've seen both some of the original ones, selfings and sib crosses, and by every characteristic of the floral form, the shape, it's Arandiaca. Where the red comes from exactly, I'm guessing is either some introgression from another species, but I don't know what that would be, or it is a combination of the orange, the Arandiaca, and the yellow. Whatever it is, it's beautiful. But I will tell you, if you've had luck or problems growing the red form, I've found they don't grow as well, which makes me think maybe they've got some major genetic mistake, or I wouldn't say mistake. Um,
Mutation.
what's that, Sue?
Did you say like
Mutation. That's the
a
word I'm looking
mutation
for.
or for mistake?
I, it's probably a deletion where a part of a chromosome is missing. But whatever it is, if you breed the reds together, you get reds. But if you breed to other colors, then tend to get the orange.
Well, that's interesting because that came from John Stanton, and it was the label says the tag says it was a cross between a red and a yellow form.
Yeah, I've got that too, and I'm not sure that tag is right.
Okay,
I
all right.
I, I think
It didn't make any sense to me. I wouldn't have thought to get the red from that.
no, I think that maybe what happened was it was a cross between a red and a yellow, but the pollen somehow Radiaca has an issue of self-pollination,
Uh-huh.
and I've had the red self-pollinate a number of times. So I suspect that cross was a selfing of the red form.
Well, that makes more sense.
It does. Okay, next. Carolyn Reed Lynchburg. Here's an Arantiaca by Callia Twinkle Star. Twinkle Star was one of the darkest purples around in the 60s. It didn't have great shape, but it had phenomenal color. It's all but disappeared, but here in this particular hybrid, Carolyn Reed, it shows what it could do. And you'll see the Aradiaca shape hiding in there in the cupping of the thing. And that red came through just as beautiful as you could possibly want. And this has been around a while. It's kind of hard to find. I'm not sure where you got this, Sue.
I got that back when I first started growing orchids up in North Carolina. Um,
Yep. It's been around a long time. On the upper right is Princess Buttercup. That's one of my crosses. That's one of my favorites because it got the Beaufort. Most people don't know is a cross of a yellow by coccinia, and typically Beaufort passes on the yellow form. But when you use it, sometimes the coccinia will come out in the flowers. And here you can see this is one of the redder ones or orange. Almost all the rest of them are solid yellow. The bottom I had in here, this is not a great flowering, but I wanted to discuss something. This is a clone that now is called El Cerrito. This was awarded as a clone called Miva Orica. And what I find fascinating is the cross that I got this from, I actually have several of them, were all deeply pigmented like this. Whereas the El Cerrito, all the ones I could find were all yellow. And all the other siblings of this cross were all darkly colored like this. So I have real doubts about this being the same. And if you have something that doesn't seem right, make sure you keep the old name as well as the new one, because sooner or later someone might figure out what happened and get it all straight.
I was figuring that the problem was that the crispata may not really be a flava.
Right. Yeah, I don't. That wasn't what was used. They synonymized what was used for
Right.
flava. I mean, the crispata that they're calling flava now, I really think is a different thing. So somebody needs to look at it and not me. Thank you. Next. Again, small flowers, bright colors is a characteristic of spring. Golden treat, got trick or treat by golden wax. We see trick or treat in an awful lot of things. It's got a big dose of Arandiaca in there. If you look closely at those flowers, you'll see the Arandiaca lip and the little bit of petals folding forward that's characteristic of Aradiaca hybrids. The cherry treat is an interesting one that contrasts in color. This is an Allen Black plant, and he likes those kind of colors and those small things, and that's really unusual in the way the color pattern is. Orange Trick by Ciliari. I guess that's an encyclia now, Sue, or an epidendrum.
Epidendrum.
That's what I thought. Look at the flowers. It's a shame we don't have a Ciliari to show them, but it's a dominant hybrid, a dominant species in hybrids, and certainly dominant here. But the orange tricks coming through, bringing the color. Nice, nice, nice. I think I got that from you, Sue.
Yep.
Many years ago.
I got a monster out there.
Yeah, I've got a monster too. This is actually a division. You can't move the monster.
I know.
Okay, next. Lily Marie Almas, MGR Orange Nugget by Jalapa. This was a cross made by the late Marv Reagan. I think it's named after one of his granddaughters. Just an interesting thing. The color combination of that yellow lip with the petals and sepals so dark is really unusual to find. And this came out again. It's coming from the Arondiaca in the background. Jalapa adding the extra dose of red. On the right is Lovely Martha by Terracotta Beauty. Again, we're seeing the same pattern over and over again of Arondiaca in the background. And this one also has a pretty good dose of what we used to call the Brazilian Lalias, the ones that were small and miniature that have so bright colors and nice long stems. Bottom left is Zool. This is a Bill Williams clone. I bought a bunch of these when they were just seedlings. Not one of them came out with this color combination. Skinner Eye is an interesting parent in that it often dominates but produces muddy colors. And most of the ones that I had that I bought initially were just like that. And then I saw this in bloom, I think at the World Orchid Congress, which had exactly what I wanted in one of the plants that I bought, one of the seedlings. So I bought it. It grows like an Arondiaca. It's difficult to maintain it in a pot. It grows out of it very fast. But the nice part is it'll get 6 or 7 flowers on a stem. And they open yellow and then they get this beautiful color, but the lip keeps that nice yellow contrast. It's a really nice hybrid. Next. This is Dominiana variety Cerulean by Diamond Girl, which is kind of an interesting hybrid. It's hard to find a lot of hybrids made with the Dominiana and the Cerulean form especially. It looks to me like it's got some Cerulean color on the petals, but I can't tell for sure because it's hard in a photo to tell if it's Cerulean or just a nice lavender color. But beautiful flat flower. Amethyst Star Parkside. This is a mini purple cross with Longipes. Again, this is going to be really small. Mini purple small and Longipes is small. Beautiful covered column. Some people really like this particular kind of plant. You can see some of the plant in the background. Again, telling you it's a fairly small thing. It looks like it's nicely grown. I would think this would do pretty well inside under lights.
Well, that's probably the way Joe was growing it, at least during the winter time.
I would kind of guess. Next. Epicatlia Gyoji Fumi. This one threw me. Arondiaca is always so dominant that I would have expected this to be more yellow, and I guess it is a pale yellow. This is crossed with Epidendrum incumbens. Look at the flowers on that. Really nice. What's even more fun is look at the photo next to it. This is Gyoji crossed with Sunny Delight, and here the yellow comes out. Finally, it can hide generations, but you got a beautiful inflorescence, lots of flowers, and lots of color. And that's yours, Sue. How does the plant grow?
It's smallish. It's
That's
it's got
interesting.
it's got like three flower spikes. It's maybe in a 5-inch pot.
That's nice. That's an interesting hybrid to see. Both of these are very interesting. Hard to believe we got both of them sent in the same month.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Next, Epicatlia Renee Marquise. This is Pseudepidendrum by Clesiana. Fascinating that the Pseudepidendrum dominated. Pseudepidendrum is a beautiful species. I seem to think we had one last month of just the species, that color combination of green with the yellow. The Clesiana, it can be lavender, but most of the ones we see are white. Um, so I don't know what the background in this was, but clearly the Pseudepidendrum dominated. That's a very interesting thing. We often ignore epidendrums because they were so common at one time, and there were quite a few people in the West Coast trying to improve the epidendrums to be more manageable, trying to miniaturize them with lots of flowers and different colors besides the common one. And this looks like some of the ones I saw in those greenhouses. They never quite took off in terms of being popular, but you still see them quite a bit on the West Coast and here too. We have some hybridizers that come and they have these for sale. Very nice. And on the bottom right, I think this may be one of the first hybrids made. Um, this is Vicii, made in, or at least registered in 1890. This is Epidendrum radicans by Coccinia, and probably the first one ever to get anything look like a red in the hybrids, at least the Cattleya Alliance. Really neat. I'm surprised you have this, Sue. Where did you
I
get this?
From Alan. Alan said that Ernest Heatherton grew it as a hedge around his nursery. And he had brought one to one of the shows at Carl Smith, and he gave me a piece of it, and it grows like an epidendrum.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a surprise, and I don't think there's any doubt that the Coccinia is in there from that color,
Mm-hmm.
without a doubt. Fascinating. Next, Barkeria. I visited Alan last month, and I can attest to his ability to grow Barkerias, not just from the flowers, but the plants. They are interesting growers, kind of sprawling sorts of plants. And it's a group in the Cattleya Alliance, the genus in the Cattleya Alliance, that we don't see much, and you don't see a lot of them used in hybrids. But here we have Natalie Warford with the typical pattern or color of the Barkeria. On the right is a Barkeria scinovata, a species, and you see how dominant they are for form. And it looked like looking at all the plants in his greenhouse that they are pretty dominant in terms of growth habit too. But nice little things. Next, Diacrum bicornutum. This is a species that I guess we used to call it Carlathron, something like that, bicornutum. And you can see the shape of the flowers in the photo on the right. The shape tends to dominate as a parent, and other additions from the other parents typically are coming through, but in small doses. Um, you can see the snowflake by anceps. You might think that would be more round shaped like a Cattleya, but here again, you see the bicornutum just dominating. Nicely grown. Beautiful inflorescence. I seem to recall they last a long time too. Next, Rotonia negrilensis. We had some um, discussions of the Brotonias, I think, when Claude was with us. Was that just last month or 2 months ago? It was
Yeah,
two
two
months
months
ago.
ago.
About where it is, where it's found in Jamaica, and its habitat. Apparently, it's not really abundant, but he's been making some sib crosses and selfings over the years, and produce some pretty beautiful clones of this particular species.
He says the only place that was found in Jamaica is the area that got hit so hard by the hurricane this past year. So there's a real question about whether there's any left.
I think that's always going to be the case in the Caribbean. And one has to think that for years they've always been hit by hurricanes, but now they have the problem of people deforesting and taking out
Yeah.
large areas where they grew. On the right is Renati SNW. This has Rotonia in the background coming through the Why Not, and Why Not is a cross of Rotonia by Arandiaca, and you can see the color coming out in the Arandiaca. Fairly flat flowers for anything with Arandiaca in it. That's a beautiful thing. I'm not sure I've seen that one before, Sue, but I like the shape, I like the color and the pattern on the petals. Next, Estrella Grande. This is a Jiminy Cricket cross with Ludimaniana. And if you've been around a while, you know that Rhyncholalia hybrids tend to really dominate for shape. And in this case, it's got Brassivola and Rhyncholalia in there, and Ludimaniana that we saw in the very beginning of the Cattleya group with that color. Beautiful lip, again, spots telling us what's in there. That's Allen's. Brassicatlia Craig Detrini, Little Stars by Maxima. Little Stars, again, a Rotonia hybrid, typically with lots and lots of flowers. Maxima can have a lot of flowers too. This one looks like it's got a pretty good flower count. It's always hard to say whether you're seeing the maximum number of flowers a plant can get unless you get it to be a really mature plant. On the upper right is Digviano Schroederi, Rhyncholalia digviana by Schroederi, and Rhyncholalia tends to dominate for form. Can't quite see if those flowers have a frilly lip, so looks like there's some.
They do.
Not the fimbriated one, but still pretty frilly.
Frilly, but not fimbriated.
And the growth pattern just also is reminiscent of Digviana hybrids. Schroederi tends to be a more difficult thing to grow, so the growth habit in this is definitely coming from the Digviana. Next, Walkeriana, beautiful example of Walkeriana, and an example of one of the things that Ben Oliveros grows really, really well. He's going to come talk about bifoliate Cattleya hybrids. I think last year he was here talking about bifoliate species, so perfect combination of things for those of you who were here before, and you'll get a treat because he's made some spectacular hybrids with the bifoliates.
Yeah, we're looking forward to seeing Ben next month.
Not that far off.
Nope. Well, Courtney, great job as always. We thank you.
Well, I was almost awake tonight, so getting past my bedtime, you know.
Yeah, right. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for tuning in.
And thanks for sending photos.
Yep. Great job.
Thanks,
Good night,
Courtney.
everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.